Modern life has left us incredibly fragile. We live in a world of absolute comfort, hiding behind corporate job titles, status, and behind our phones. And I think the marathon is one of the very few places left where you can violently strip away the noise, step straight into the fire, and face a brutal psychological audit that forces you to discover who you actually are. I remember a couple of weeks ago, I was speaking to somebody and I mentioned that I'm running my next marathon in a few weeks. And they looked at me and asked, why? Another one? And to be honest, it's a fair question when people ask, why do we put ourselves through this? And when you really step back and look at it, what I do and what you do almost makes no sense. You know, we wake up very early on a weekend, usually when it's dark, and we run for 2-3 hours before the city is even awake, going past the same pavement, same street lights again and again for weeks at a time. And it's just you and the tweet of the birds and the squeak of your running shoes. And we willingly break our body down week after week, month after month, just across an arbitrary finish line drawn on a pavement. And yet this is exactly why the marathon is beautiful. I remember standing at the Chicago Marathon start line a couple of years ago, and there was this tense, quiet energy that always hangs in the air before the sun's up on marathon morning. And I got talking to another runner standing right next to me in the corral. And I think he told me he'd ran 21 marathons. And I looked at him and asked, how do you think today will go? And he didn't hesitate. He just looked at me with a little smile and said, it'll be tough. They always are. He knew there is no version of a marathon that is comfortable. But as we stood there in the shivering cold Chicago wind, waiting for that gun to go off, I realized there was an incredible fleeting feeling of a privilege in being able to stand on that line at all. We are borrowing this time. We are borrowing those miles. One day our bodies simply won't let us do this anymore. And I think that's why I keep coming back to the marathon. And I think if you ask any first-time marathoners, why do they run marathons? They all say things like, I want to challenge myself. I want to see whether I can do it. I want a goal. I want to test myself. I want it for health and fitness reasons. And if you ask 2 or 3-time marathon runners, their responses will be, I want to see whether I can do it better, whether I can run it faster, whether I still got it in me. But I think if you ask runners who have ran 4, 5 and more marathons, their responses are different. And that elderly runner I was stood next to in Chicago knew something that I was only starting to learn. We don't just run to cross a finish line, to pick up a medal, to hit a time on a clock. We run marathons to remember what it feels like to struggle. And think about how we live today. And I think in every other area of my life, I do whatever I can to avoid friction and struggle. I think we all do to some extent. We naturally seek out convenience, comfort, and the path of least resistance. And when suffering does happen in normal life, it usually catches us completely by surprise. It blindsides us. It's something we don't want, we want rid of. But out there on the marathon course, we are making the active, deliberate choice to suffer. You're even circling a date far in the future, knowing full well exactly what is waiting for you on the road ahead. And there's something incredibly empowering about taking ownership of that struggle. You're not a victim of it. You are intentionally stepping away from safety and walking straight into the fire. That is what the marathon does. It forces you to choose the struggle. And I think I crave it because my daily life is just so loud. My days are spent managing operations and navigating deadlines. It's a corporate world built on controlled environments. And I carry the weight of that Monday to Friday baggage with me. And it's so easy to hide in that noise. It's so easy to put on that armor and pretend that those heavy, complicated things are who I actually am. But the marathon violently strips me and you of all that. When the race starts, the mandate changes. It becomes brutally, beautifully simple. Get my body from here to here without keeling over. That's it. I simply don't have the luxury or the energy to carry my daily clutter anymore. That is what the marathon does. It clears out the noise. And then we hit kilometer 35. That is where the real work begins. That is where the real struggle begins. The marathon forces this massive, undeniable, brutal head-to-toe checkup on your soul. It asks you questions that you didn't even know needed answers. How deep into the struggle can you actually go? Who are you when your energy is completely gone? I've seen people crying at kilometer 35. They aren't crying because their legs hurt or their body has let them down. They're crying, I think, because the marathon has actually broken down the walls they've spent years building. It will reveal yourself. In a world where we spend so much energy trying to look strong and put together, the marathon forces us to be completely, undeniably vulnerable. It strips away every single lie you've ever told yourself about who you are. And for me, the pain cave doesn't just reveal physical fatigue, it dredges up everything. It feels like it brings to the surface every ounce of pain I've ever experienced, witnessed, or carried in my life. It forces a raw, almost terrifying audit of every scar I have. My glycogen stores are empty, the adrenaline is gone, and my brain is strictly monitoring my survival. Suddenly, it presents problems that need fixing quick. Your pacing is slipping, the cramps are starting to fire, and you have to make split-second decisions while your mind is entirely clouded. It traps you in the absolute present moment, and you can't stress about those Monday morning meetings and goals when you're barely surviving the current second you're in. And people talk about mantras and phrases that you should repeat to yourself. They tell you that when things get tough, you just need these to keep you going, keep you moving forward. But what actually goes through your head when you're in the absolute depths of it, when the crowds sound muffled, and all you can hear is the frantic rhythm of your own breathing and the heavy dragging of your running shoes, and you legitimately believe you cannot take another step. Positive thinking doesn't survive kilometer 35. When I've been at the bottom of that well in some of my marathons, completely stripped down by the audit, I wasn't hoping for the best. My mind violently latched onto one single, undeniable thought, just to survive. I just kept telling myself, if I can do this, I can do anything. And I can do this. That is why the marathon is beautiful. You can't fake your way out of that place. You can't delegate it to somebody else. You just have to endure it. And the amazing thing is, when you're in that dark place, you realize you aren't doing this alone. When you're deep into those late miles, I can look at the runner next to me and we don't even need to speak. I remember during the Abu Dhabi Marathon last year, I was running with a runner for the last 2-3K of that marathon, and we didn't talk. He looked at me, he knew I was in pain. I looked at him, and I knew he was in pain. But it's a pain that we both actively chose, and we both knew it. And when you cross that finish line, I always call it the ultimate reset. You realize that the things that weighed you down yesterday are incredibly small compared to the depths of yourself you've just had to face. There is this massive collective catharsis at the finish line. I've seen grown men sobbing. I've seen complete strangers holding each other up, carrying each other across the line. Everyone out there has their own reasons for running a marathon, but somehow almost everyone seems and looks a lot lighter afterward. You stand around aching, wrapped in those crinkly foil blankets, the salt and the sweat dried on your face, talking with people you've never met before, but feel like old friends. It's a quiet, shared understanding. For those 4 hours, you'll be part of a tribe of people who have all made this completely odd, voluntary choice to suffer together. And being surrounded by them, it gives me this profound sense of belonging, and it probably does to you as well. I almost feel placed by it. That is why the marathon is beautiful. But then the bubble begins to disintegrate. We eventually have to start that slow, stiff walk back to the hotel. And you may feel that distinct heavy wave of sadness wash over you. And I sometimes realize that the purity of that experience is ending. The race is over. The crowd is dispersing and everyone is packing up to fly home. And you wake up on Monday morning, the foil blanket is in the trash. The medal is stuffed in your carry-on. You get on the flight, and by Tuesday morning, you're sitting back at your desk. You're looking at your screen, you're talking about corporate things, meeting schedules, client deadlines. Your colleagues ask you about how was your weekend, and you say, it was fine. But nobody around you really knows what you were doing on Sunday morning. They might notice that you're walking a little bit stiff, but they don't know about the checkup. They don't know about the audit, about the reset. They don't know about the pain cave or the desperate negotiations you made with yourself at kilometer 35. You sit there in your office chair, completely surrounded by normal life, and you feel like you're harboring this massive, beautiful secret. You feel like a slightly different person than the one who left the office on Friday. The contrast is jarring because out there on the marathon course, everything was clear. Life was simple. But back in the real world, the static and the noise are waiting for you the second you turn your phone back on. And I think I chased the marathon because I crave that purity of the marathon bubble. I need the audit, I need the reset, and I need to remember what it feels like to belong to that tribe, and I need the struggle. That is why I keep running. Why do you run the marathon distance? Are you out there trying to pass your own audit, or are you just trying to find your way back into that marathon bubble? Let me know down below in the comments. My name is Paul. This is Running the Sun. I'll see you in the next one.